Hey there, America. My name is Brad Fields. Welcome to my YouTube channel where we're looking for unprecedented faith in these unprecedented times. What we need is Jesus. I love this song. We're going to listen to a little bit of it. Jesus loves you. He's done miracles. Without His help, we don't have anything. He created the entire universe. Everything is held in His hands. He can look at all of eternity and He can pierce His eye right through all of it. And even though He's the creator of the universe, He cares about the little people on this planet. He cares about what's going on in America. He cares about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. He loves the Chinese. He loves Muslims. He loves us all. He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, into the world. The best and brightest, God in the flesh. And He gave us an opportunity to walk back to the Father. Let His Spirit come into our life. He is amazing. Well, today we're going to talk about some amazing things. We're going to talk more about prayer. Last week we talked about George Whitefield and how his sermons and how he had shaped America, and he directly impacted the First Continental Congress, and that because of his specific sermon, he was able to change people's hearts and minds. And that's what we're looking to do on this YouTube channel. We're looking for a complete restoration of the Constitution. We're looking for biblical principles. We're looking for limited government. Jesus came into the world and He was able to heal people. He healed the blind, the lame, and the deaf. And He can do that with government, who oftentimes is deaf, dumb, and blind, cannot see afar off, just drunken on their own power. And the only way to get that power back is to start reading the scriptures, start praying, and then start doing what the Lord asks of you, getting that divine voice telling you to do this, do that. A lot of times it's service. It can be little things. It can start off with making some calls to a senator or an email, or hosting a Constitution course, or just watching these videos and sharing them with others. There's a lot of things that we can do that are in our power. And that's what we learn in American history. American history teaches us that it's been done before, that when good people get involved and when they involve the Lord in their lives, it can have powerful impacts on the nation and in the community. And so I really want you to feel that, to realize that you can make the difference, that you can be the change that our country needs, that we can change the culture, that like Whitefield, we can have this revival where people are hungry and desperate for the love of God and to feel that safety in His arms. So we're going to start off with we're going to fast forward all the way up to 1787. I know we're skipping some good stuff, but we'll go back. But we're going to talk about Benjamin Franklin. A lot of times we've heard in society to follow the science. Well, it's interesting how Benjamin Franklin, one of the greatest scientists ever to live, he created or invented the potbelly stove. He invented the bifocals. He's the one that invented the terms positive and negative. Almost got electrocuted by a kite, flying a kite in the middle of a storm, trying to do some experiments. I wouldn't recommend that, kids. But it's interesting because he believed in a divine science, that all truth and intelligence flowed from a higher power. And so it's interesting how there is a divine science, and it comes from God. God created this whole world. He owns everything. So he knows how the molecules work. He created the earth. And so Benjamin Franklin is a timeless man, and he saved America. Okay, with his ideas, and we'll talk about how he saved America. Let's first talk about how the Constitutional Convention started. So after the Revolutionary War, there was the Articles of Confederation, and it was super weak, very, very super weak. Uh, the government didn't have the power to tax. The nation was in a lot of debt. There was restricted travel from the state to state, which really they acted as uh, individual countries. And so there was just a lot of problems. People were, it just wasn't working. And so George Washington and the delegates came to Philadelphia again. Okay, it's the 11 years prior they had signed the Declaration of Independence, and they had declared their independence. And so really there was a lot of hope. James Madison showed up. He was all gung ho. He's like, yeah, we're gonna have a whole new document, and it's gonna be great. And so George Washington, he had a lot of expectations, and he said, guys, if we don't do something now, this we might have to face another war. So he gave a very powerful speech, and he motivated the delegates to really dig in, to really give their best, to be open and to be negotiable, and to raise the standard, do the best that they could. And so they tried that. They tried going after it for a couple of weeks, and things weren't going really well. A month later, still things were not going very well. And so people were starting to leave the convention, and people were getting emotionally charged. Things weren't working out very well, and it was just a mess. It was a hot mess. What it stunk in there. There wasn't air conditioning. BO. Just it stunk, and so people wanted to go back to their families, and they were really starting to lose faith. Um, and so it's interesting because Benjamin Franklin, at this point, he had never spoken in the convention. Typically, if he wanted to say something, he would write it down and then hand it off to someone, and then they would read it. And that's how he communicated. And but Benjamin Franklin, again, he was with George Whitefield. He had printed a lot of George Whitefield's sermons. He was influenced by Whitefield. Again, in 1765, he went on a trip with Whitefield to Europe to protest the Stamp Act. That was in 1765. And so you can imagine that he got a lot of sharpening from Whitefield. And Franklin at the time was 81. Okay. And the average age of the founding fathers at the convention was 33. Now think about that. 33 years old. What were you doing at 33 years old? And if we go back 2,000 years ago, who was 33? That's right. Jesus. Okay? Jesus was around 33 years old when he died. Okay, so Benjamin Franklin, he's the oldest delegate. He sees all this infighting. He sees people leaving, and the situation is not very hopeful. And he arises, and later people say that he spoke with authority. So you can feel that this moment was sacred. It was ordained and blessed by God. And let's see what he says. So he stands and he says this: in this situation of this assembly, groping as it were in the dark to find political truth, and scarce able to distinguish it when presented to us, how has it happened, sir, that we have not hitherto once thought of humbly applying to the Father of lights to illuminate our understandings? In the beginning of the contest with Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayers in this room for the divine protection. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us who were engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances of a superintending providence in our favor. And have we now forgotten that powerful friend? Or do we imagine we no longer need his assistance? I have lived long, sir, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings, the Bible, that except the Lord build the house, okay, so now he's talking about a temple, they labor in vain that build it. Okay, so when the Jews in about, long time before Christ, they had their temples destroyed, and then they had to rebuild them, and that took the help of the Lord to do that. So he's talking about temples. And then he says this, I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. And we ourselves shall become a reproach and a byword down to future ages, imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations, be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business, and that one or more of the clergy of the city be requested to officiate in that service. So there you go. So he called the nation to prayer. He had reminded the people at the convention of what had worked and that they had forgotten. And so once they did that, Roger Sherman seconded that motion, and then they were able to start praying every morning. And they took a cooling off period. So after Franklin's words, they took 3 days off and they went to church. And a lot of the sermons, they heard sermons preached, patriotic sermons. And then there was a wonderful prayer given by Reverend Roger Williams, and just blessed them and blessed that they could have wisdom. And so this spirit of Whitefield, the influence that this preacher had influenced, again, Benjamin Franklin. And he called the nation to prayer, and as a result of that, they started to get the political wheels moving. They started to get the lubrication going, and they were able to create the greatest nation on the face of this planet. And afterwards, they did acknowledge that it was God, that it was the intervention of God, and that it was close, very, very close to that of a miracle, if not a miracle. Again, there was things there that they had to compromise with slavery, so a lot of it, wasn't scripture, but they did acknowledge that it was a miracle that the hand of God helped them to bring it about. And so thank you very much for watching. I want to leave one quote with you. This is from the prophet Joseph Smith, and he said this: the best way to obtain truth and wisdom is not to ask from books, but to go to God in prayer and obtain divine teaching. And that's what Benjamin Franklin did. He called the nation to prayer. We can't learn everything through books. We have to get it through heaven. And so I know that's true. God bless America. Thank you so much for watching. Hit the like and subscribe button. If you have some questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. All right. God bless, and you have a great night.